Commander Zethkar stood tall on the bridge of his massive warship, watching the holographic display with amusement. The blue-skinned Velkarian officer's four eyes sparkled with what could only be described as entertainment as he observed the human fleet approaching. "Look at them," he said to his second-in-command, pointing at the screen with one of his 6 arms. "These primitive creatures think they can challenge the Galactic Empire with their tiny ships and ancient weapons." The Galactic Empire had ruled over 3,000 star systems for over 5 centuries. Their technology was so advanced that most species surrendered without firing a single shot. Energy shields that could deflect entire asteroid impacts, weapons that could crack planets in half, and ships larger than human cities. This was the power of the Empire. But humans were different. These strange bipedal creatures from a small blue planet called Earth had refused to surrender when the Empire arrived at their borders. Instead, they had declared war. The entire Imperial Council had laughed when they heard the news. "Sir," reported the weapons officer, "the human fleet consists of only 47 vessels. Our single battle group has over 200 ships." Zethkar chuckled, a sound like grinding metal. 47 ships against our might? This will be the shortest war in Imperial history. What weapons are they carrying? "Primitive kinetic weapons, sir. Metal projectiles fired from tubes. Some basic energy weapons, but nothing that can penetrate our shields. Their largest ship is barely 1/10 the size of our smallest cruiser." The other officers on the bridge joined their commander in laughter. Throughout the Empire, humans were already being mocked. Their technology was centuries behind Imperial standards. While the Empire used quantum computers that could process thoughts faster than light, humans still used primitive digital systems. While Imperial soldiers wore armor that could withstand plasma bombardment, humans wore simple metal plates. "Have you seen their ground forces?" asked the tactical officer, bringing up images on the main screen. "They still use projectile weapons that fire small metal bullets. Their soldiers carry individual weapons instead of sharing energy from a single source like civilized species." The images showed human soldiers in basic camouflage uniforms, carrying rifles that looked crude compared to Imperial energy weapons. They had no personal force fields, no advanced armor, and no neural link technology that connected them to their commanders. "Pathetic," Zethkar declared. "They fight like savages from the primitive age, each soldier acting alone instead of working as a unified mind like proper warriors." The Empire's military doctrine was based on overwhelming technological superiority. Their soldiers were connected through neural implants that allowed perfect coordination. Their weapons could adjust power levels automatically. Their armor could become invisible. And their ships could calculate millions of battle scenarios in seconds. Human tactics seemed completely backward to Imperial standards. Humans actually hid behind rocks and trees during battles. They moved in small groups instead of massive formations. They even used something called snipers, individual soldiers who hid far away and fired single shots at targets. "Snipers," repeated the intelligence officer with disgust. "Cowards who hide and attack from a distance instead of facing their enemies with honor. No warrior race worthy of respect would use such dishonorable tactics." The Imperial way of war was direct and overwhelming. Massive armies would advance in perfect formation, protected by energy shields, firing coordinated volleys of plasma that could melt entire mountainsides. Battles were won through superior technology and numbers, not through hiding and individual skill. "Their military leaders must be insane," said the communications officer. "They're actually planning to engage us on the ground. Don't they realize that our hover tanks can level entire cities? Our battle mechs stand 50 feet tall and can survive nuclear explosions." Zethkar nodded, still amused. "Perhaps they don't understand the difference in our capabilities. Send them another surrender demand. When they see our full fleet, surely even these primitive minds will understand that resistance is pointless." The human response came back within minutes. It was short and simple. "Come and take it." The bridge erupted in laughter again. The arrogance of these humans was beyond belief. They had seen the Imperial fleet, counted the ships, analyzed the weapons, and still refused to surrender. "Very well," Zethkar announced. "If they want to be destroyed, we shall accommodate them. This will serve as an excellent example to other species who might consider resisting Imperial expansion." As the Imperial fleet moved into attack formation, intelligence reports continued to arrive about human military capabilities. The reports painted a picture of a hopelessly outmatched enemy. Human ships had simple steel hulls that could be pierced by basic laser weapons. Their fastest ships could barely reach half the speed of Imperial vessels. Their most powerful weapons could not even scratch Imperial armor. "Sir," reported the science officer, "our analysis shows that human reflexes are significantly slower than most Imperial species. Their decision-making process is inefficient, requiring verbal communication instead of instant neural connection. They cannot process battle information fast enough to respond to modern warfare." This was true according to Imperial standards. While Imperial soldiers could react to threats in milliseconds through their neural implants, humans needed time to see, think, and respond. While Imperial weapons could automatically target and fire at hundreds of enemies simultaneously, humans had to aim each shot individually. The Empire had fought and conquered over 50 different species. Each time the pattern was the same. Superior Imperial technology would overwhelm primitive defenses within hours. The longest any species had lasted was 3 days, and that was only because they had hidden in underground bunkers. "Prepare for orbital bombardment," Zethkar ordered. "We'll start by destroying their military installations from space. Then we'll land ground forces to finish any survivors. This should be over by tomorrow." The Imperial ships moved into position above the human colony world of Kepler 442b. Massive energy cannons emerged from hidden compartments, each one capable of creating explosions visible from space. The humans had chosen this world as their first line of defense, apparently believing their primitive fortifications could somehow stop the Empire. It was time to show these humans the futility of resistance. The first bombardment began at dawn on Kepler 442b. Massive energy beams streaked down from the Imperial fleet, lighting up the sky like artificial lightning. The ground shook as each blast hit the human defensive positions, creating craters the size of football stadiums. From his command ship, Zethkar watched the destruction with satisfaction. "Their shield generators are already failing," he reported to the Imperial High Command. "These humans build their defenses like children playing with toys." But something strange was happening on the surface. Instead of the complete devastation the Empire expected, the human positions seemed to be absorbing the attacks. When the smoke cleared, many of the defensive structures were still standing. "How is this possible?" demanded the weapons officer. "Our cannons can vaporize reinforced duraplast. What are these buildings made of?" The science officer ran quick scans of the human fortifications. "Sir, they appear to be using some kind of layered defense system. Multiple walls of different materials with empty spaces between them. The energy is being dispersed and absorbed rather than penetrating directly." Zethkar frowned. This was unexpected but hardly concerning. Primitive engineering tricks. Increase power to maximum and continue the bombardment. The attack intensified, but the human defenses continued to hold better than predicted. More concerning were the readings from the orbital sensors. Human ships were moving in patterns that made no sense according to Imperial tactical doctrine. "Their fleet is breaking formation," reported the tactical officer, confusion clear in his voice. "They're splitting into individual groups and moving in random directions. Don't they understand that divided forces are weaker forces? In Imperial warfare, fleets moved as single massive formations. Combined shields protected all ships. Coordinated firing patterns maximized damage, and unified command ensured perfect tactical execution. The human fleet was doing the opposite, scattering like frightened insects." "Perhaps they're retreating," suggested the communications officer. When they realized the hopelessness of their situation, their formation broke down due to panic. But the scattered human ships weren't retreating. Instead, they were moving to positions around the Imperial fleet, creating a loose circle at various distances. Some ships went far away, others came closer, but none maintained the tight formation that proper military doctrine required. "Are they trying to surround us?" Zethkar asked with amusement. "With 47 ships against our 200? The mathematics alone should tell them this is impossible." The first human attack came from an unexpected direction. Instead of the massive energy barrages that civilized species used, the humans fired what appeared to be simple metal projectiles. But these projectiles were moving impossibly fast, and they came from multiple directions simultaneously. Several Imperial ships reported minor damage. Nothing serious, just small holes in their outer hulls, but the attacks kept coming from different angles, making it impossible to face all the human ships at once. "They're using hit-and-run tactics," reported the tactical officer with disgust. "They fire a few shots and then retreat before we can return fire. No honorable species fights this way." Zethkar agreed completely. Proper warfare involved facing your enemy directly, standing firm and trading blows until the stronger force won. These humans were acting like scavengers, darting in to nip at the Imperial fleet before running away. "They lack the courage for real battle," he declared. "Order all ships to advance in formation. We'll crush them with a single coordinated assault." But when the Imperial fleet tried to advance, the human ships simply moved away, maintaining their distance while continuing to fire their primitive weapons. The metal projectiles might be simple, but they were surprisingly effective at finding gaps in Imperial armor. "Sir," the engineering officer reported, "we're receiving damage reports from across the fleet. Small breaches mostly, but the humans seem to be targeting specific systems rather than trying to destroy entire ships." This was another puzzling aspect of human tactics. Instead of trying to completely destroy Imperial vessels, they seemed to be aiming for particular components. Sensor arrays, weapon systems, engine exhausts, always the most vulnerable and important parts. "How are they identifying our weak points so accurately?" Zethkar wondered aloud. "Their scanning technology is centuries behind ours." The answer came from an unexpected source. One of the junior officers monitoring long-range communications detected something unusual. "Sir, I'm picking up faint transmissions between the human ships. They appear to be sharing targeting information manually." "Manually?" The concept was almost incomprehensible to Imperial minds. "You mean they're actually talking to each other during battle?" Imperial forces used instant neural links for communication during combat. Thoughts and orders were transmitted faster than speech, allowing perfect coordination. The idea that warriors would waste time with verbal communication during battle seemed incredibly primitive, but apparently, the humans were doing exactly that. Individual ship captains were calling out target information to each other, sharing observations and coordinating attacks through voice communication. It was inefficient, slow, and completely contrary to modern military science. "Listen to this," said the communications officer, playing back intercepted human transmissions. "Eagle 7 to Hawk 3. I see weak armor plating on the big ship's starboard side. About midship. Copy that, Eagle 7. Mammoth 1. Can you get an angle on that position?" "Negative, Hawk 3. I'm engaged with 2 cruisers. Fox Squadron, you're closest. Fox Leader here, we see it. Moving to attack position. Cover us for 30 seconds. Zethkar listened to this primitive chatter with growing amazement. Not only were the humans using voice communication, but they were making tactical decisions in real time based on individual observations. There was no central command calculating optimal attack patterns, no computer determining the best targets, no unified strategy at all. "They're making it up as they go along," he said in disbelief. "Each ship captain is deciding independently what to do. There's no overall plan, no coordination, no proper command structure. And yet somehow this chaotic approach was working. The scattered human ships were managing to stay ahead of Imperial targeting systems while inflicting steady damage. Their random movements made it impossible to predict where they would be next, and their individual decision-making meant they could adapt to changing situations faster than Imperial computers could calculate responses. "This is madness," declared the science officer.
"Military doctrine exists for good reasons."
"Individual initiative leads to confusion and defeat. How can they possibly coordinate effective attacks without proper planning?" But the humans were coordinating, just not in any way the Empire understood. Instead of following predetermined battle plans, they were adapting to circumstances moment by moment. When one ship found a weakness, it immediately shared that information with others. When a group needed support, nearby ships would respond without waiting for orders from higher command. The first hour of battle ended with the Imperial fleet suffering minor but widespread damage, while the human fleet remained largely intact. This was not how the simulation models had predicted things would go. On the surface of Kepler 442b, Imperial ground forces had finally landed after the orbital bombardment failed to break human defenses completely. General Morthack, a veteran of dozens of planetary conquests, stood in his command center watching the tactical displays with growing irritation. "Where are they?" he demanded, his tentacles writhing with frustration. "Our sensors show human forces in this area, but when my troops arrive, they find nothing but empty positions." The humans were proving as elusive on the ground as they had been in space. Imperial doctrine called for massive frontal assaults with overwhelming firepower, but the enemy seemed to vanish whenever Imperial forces approached in strength. "Sir," reported his aide, 3rd Battalion reports they've taken the human command bunker on Hill 347. "Excellent. What intelligence did they capture?" "The bunker was empty, sir. Completely abandoned. But there were signs of recent occupation." Morthack's 4 eyes narrowed. This was the 7th command post his forces had captured, and all had been empty. The humans seemed to be one step ahead of every Imperial advance. "General," came an urgent transmission from the field. "This is Colonel Vexistar with the 15th Assault Legion. We're taking fire from an unknown position. Request immediate support." Morthack switched to the Colonel's communication channel. "Report your situation, Colonel." "We're advancing across the valley as ordered, sir. But one of my soldiers just disappeared. No energy weapon discharge, no explosion, nothing. He just fell down. Disappeared? Explain yourself more clearly, Colonel." "I mean, he's dead, sir. But I don't understand how. There's a small hole in his armor, and another hole on the opposite side, as if something passed completely through his body." Morthack consulted his tactical data. Imperial armor was designed to stop energy weapons, explosive shrapnel, and even direct impacts from vehicles. What could possibly punch straight through advanced composite materials? "Are you certain it wasn't friendly fire from your own troops?" "Positive, sir. All my soldiers are accounted for and firing in the opposite direction. Whatever hit him came from somewhere else entirely." Before Morthack could respond, another transmission came in from a different unit. "General, this is Major Kreltos with 2nd Reconnaissance. We just lost our point scout. Same thing. Small hole through his armor, soldier down." Then another report. 4th Company has a casualty. "Sniper fire, we think." "Sniper fire?" Morthack had heard this term in the intelligence briefings about human tactics, but he hadn't paid much attention. The concept seemed too primitive to be a real threat. A single individual hiding somewhere and firing one shot at a time? How can one soldier threaten an entire battalion? But the reports kept coming in. Imperial soldiers were falling one by one, each with the same mysterious wound pattern. Small entry holes in their armor. No energy discharge detected, no indication of where the shots were coming from. "This is impossible," declared the science officer. "Our armor can withstand plasma rifles at close range. What kind of weapon can penetrate it so easily?" The answer came from the battlefield medical team. "Sir, we've examined the casualties. The wounds were made by solid metal projectiles moving at extremely high velocity, much faster than standard human weapons. Metal projectiles? But their kinetic weapons are primitive. How can a simple metal bullet penetrate our armor?" "The projectiles are very small, sir, but moving incredibly fast. They seem to be designed specifically to penetrate armor rather than cause explosive damage." This made no sense according to Imperial weapons theory. Advanced civilizations used energy weapons because they could adjust power levels, penetrate any material, and cause massive area damage. Primitive kinetic weapons were supposed to be ineffective against modern armor, but somehow these human sniper weapons were proving devastatingly effective. Worse, the Imperial soldiers had no idea where the shots were coming from. "Deploy sensor drones," ordered Morthack. "Scan the entire area for heat signatures, energy emissions, anything that might reveal the shooter's position." The drones spread out across the battlefield, using every detection method in the Imperial arsenal. They found nothing. Whoever was firing at his troops was somehow invisible to advanced Imperial sensors. "How is this possible?" Morthack asked his science officer. "Our sensors can detect a single life form from 50 kilometers away. They can see through solid rock, detect heartbeats, even identify specific individuals by their neural patterns." "Unknown, sir. Either the shooter is using some kind of advanced stealth technology, or they're operating in a way our sensors aren't designed to detect." The truth was simpler than the Imperials imagined. High on a ridge 3 kilometers away, Staff Sergeant Elena Rodriguez lay perfectly still under a camouflage net, watching the Imperial forces through her rifle scope. She had been in position for 6 hours, moving only to adjust her aim. Elena was part of the Human Defense Force's elite sniper corps. She had trained for years to become invisible to enemy detection, learning to control her breathing, heartbeat, and body temperature. Her rifle was a precision instrument, capable of placing bullets exactly where she wanted them from distances that most species would consider impossible. But the Imperials didn't understand how human snipers operated. Their sensors were designed to detect energy weapons, large movements, and technological signatures. They weren't looking for a single human lying motionless under natural camouflage, using a weapon that produced no energy emission except for the brief moment of firing. Elena had already eliminated 12 Imperial soldiers, each shot carefully planned and precisely executed. She chose targets that would cause maximum disruption: officers, communication specialists, and soldiers operating important equipment. Each shot was fired from a different position along the ridge, making it appear as if multiple snipers were operating when it was really just one person moving carefully between prepared positions. The Imperial soldiers below had no idea they were being hunted by a single human with a rifle. Their advanced armor, sophisticated sensors, and superior numbers meant nothing against an enemy they couldn't see or understand. "Contact!" shouted an Imperial soldier suddenly. "I see movement on the ridge." Immediately, dozens of plasma rifles opened fire at the distant mountainside. Energy bolts lit up the sky as Imperial forces poured firepower into the area where they thought they had spotted the sniper. Elena had already moved. The moment she fired her last shot, she had rolled away from her position and crawled to a new spot 50 meters away. The Imperial counterfire was hitting empty ground while she prepared for her next shot. "Did we get him?" asked Colonel Vextar over the radio. "Negative," came the reply. "No body found, no evidence of a hit." "Then where is he?" The answer came in the form of another Imperial soldier falling to the ground. A small hole punched through his helmet. The sniper was still active, still hidden, still killing Imperial troops one by one. For the first time since the invasion began, General Morthak felt a chill of concern. His overwhelming technological superiority was being negated by a single human with a primitive weapon. This wasn't how conquest was supposed to work. Elena Rodriguez had been hunting Imperial forces for 3 days straight, and the enemy was starting to panic. From her concealed position in an abandoned mining facility, she watched through her scope as Imperial soldiers moved across the valley in tight, nervous clusters instead of their usual confident formations. "They're scared," she whispered into her radio headset, reporting back to human command. "The Imperials are changing their tactics. No more solo patrols, no more spread formations. They're bunching up like frightened sheep." The response came immediately from Colonel Martinez, her commanding officer. "Outstanding work, Rodriguez." "How many confirmed kills?" 47 over 3 days, sir. "All high-value targets. Officers, specialists, equipment operators. I've been careful to avoid random soldiers and focus on people whose loss would hurt their organization." This was the key to effective sniping that the Imperials didn't understand. Elena wasn't trying to kill as many enemies as possible. She was targeting specific individuals whose deaths would cause maximum disruption to Imperial operations. A communications officer was worth 10 regular soldiers. A squad leader was worth 20. A field commander was priceless, and the psychological impact was even more valuable than the tactical one. Imperial forces had conquered dozens of worlds through overwhelming technological superiority. They weren't used to being hunted, stalked, and picked off one by an invisible enemy. "Sir," Elena continued, "I'm seeing some interesting behavior changes. They've stopped using their standard reconnaissance patterns. Instead of sending small teams ahead to scout, they're moving entire companies together. It's slowing them down significantly." From orbit, Commander Zethkar was receiving similar reports from all ground units. The human sniper problem was spreading across multiple battlefields. What had started as minor casualties was now affecting overall military operations. "General Morthak," he transmitted to the surface commander, "explain why your advance has stopped. You have over 10,000 soldiers on the surface. Surely one hidden enemy cannot halt an entire army." Morthak's response was strained. "Sir, it's not just one sniper anymore. Our intelligence suggests there are multiple shooters operating across the front. Every time we move forward, we lose key personnel to precise long-range fire." "Multiple shooters?" "Our orbital scans should be able to detect any large group of enemies." "That's just it, sir. They're not operating as a group. Each sniper works alone from different positions at different times. We can't predict where the next attack will come from." What the Imperials didn't realize was that Elena had trained dozens of other snipers before the war began. Each one was now operating independently across the battlefield, using the same tactics that had made Elena so effective. They moved alone, struck without warning, and disappeared before the enemy could respond. The Imperial military machine, designed for massive coordinated battles, was being paralyzed by individual humans with simple rifles. "Sir," reported Elena's spotter, Private Johnson, "I count 60 Imperial soldiers moving through Sector 7. Looks like a supply convoy with heavy escort." Elena studied the group through her scope. In the center of the formation, she could see several figures that were obviously officers based on their different armor and the way other soldiers deferred to them. One in particular caught her attention, a tall figure with golden insignia that probably indicated high rank. "That's a target worth taking," she murmured, adjusting her rifle for the extreme range shot. The convoy was nearly 2 kilometers away, a distance that would challenge even her considerable skills. Elena controlled her breathing, feeling her heartbeat slow as she entered the focused state that all expert snipers cultivated. The world narrowed down to just her rifle, and the target. Wind speed, air temperature, bullet drop, target movement, all calculated in seconds based on years of training and experience. The shot rang out across the valley. 2 kilometers away, the golden-armored figure spun and fell. Elena was already moving before the body hit the ground, crawling quickly away from her firing position as Imperial forces scrambled to locate the source of the shot. What Elena didn't know was that she had just killed Colonel Vorthal, General Morthack's second in command and one of the most experienced Imperial officers in the invasion force. The loss would cripple Imperial field operations for hours as the command structure reorganized. "Command, this is Rodriguez," she reported while moving to her next position. "High-value target down in Sector 7. Recommend friendly forces prepare for Imperial confusion and potential counterattack." The human forces did exactly that. While Imperial units were paralyzed by the loss of their field commander, human infantry squads launched coordinated attacks on supply lines and communications equipment. The combination of sniper operations and conventional assault was proving devastatingly effective. On his flagship, Commander Zethkar was beginning to understand that this war was not going according to plan. The human fleet in space continued to evade his ships using their incomprehensible random tactics, while on the ground, his forces were being systematically degraded by invisible enemies. "Sir," reported his intelligence officer, "we've lost contact with the 15th, 23rd, and 31st Ground Battalions. Last reports indicated they were taking casualties from long-range fire." "How is this possible?" Zethkar demanded. "These humans have no advanced technology, no energy weapons, no proper coordination. How can primitive tactics be effective against the Imperial military?" The truth was that the Imperials had become so dependent on their technological advantages that they had forgotten the fundamentals of warfare. They relied on sensors instead of observation, on computer calculations instead of instinct, on overwhelming force instead of tactical skill. Elena and her fellow snipers represented something the Empire had never encountered: individual warriors who could think, adapt, and act independently while still supporting larger strategic goals. They didn't need neural links or quantum computers. They used their own intelligence, training, and determination. "Sir," the tactical officer reported nervously, "ground forces are requesting permission to withdraw to more defensible positions. Casualties are mounting and unit cohesion is breaking down." Zethkar couldn't believe what he was hearing. Imperial forces didn't retreat. They didn't suffer from breaking cohesion. They were supposed to be the most advanced military in the galaxy. "Denied," he snapped. "Order all units to advance immediately. Use maximum firepower on any suspected sniper positions. Level entire areas if necessary." But Elena was already 3 positions ahead of their targeting solutions. While Imperial forces wasted ammunition destroying empty ground, she was setting up for her next shot, studying her next target, planning her next move. The war was changing, and the Galactic Empire was beginning to realize that their assumptions about human military capabilities might have been dangerously wrong. The emergency meeting in the Imperial Command Center was unlike anything in the Empire's military history. For the first time in 500 years of galactic conquest, high-ranking officers were discussing the possibility of tactical failure. "The situation is unacceptable," declared Admiral Krexmoth, his 8 legs clicking nervously against the metal floor. "We have lost over 300 ground personnel in the past week. Not to massive battles or coordinated assaults, but to individual enemy soldiers hiding in the wilderness." Commander Zethkar studied the tactical displays with growing frustration. Red markers indicated where Imperial forces had taken casualties from sniper fire. The pattern covered hundreds of square kilometers with no clear concentrations that could be targeted for retaliation. "How many of these snipers are we facing?" asked General Morthak via communication link from the planet's surface. "Intelligence estimates between 30 and 50 individuals," reported the analysis officer. "But they're spread across the entire battlefield operating independently. We can't pin down exact numbers because they never operate in groups. This was completely outside Imperial understanding of military organization. Every civilized species organized their forces into hierarchical units, with clear command structures and coordinated tactics. The idea that individual soldiers could operate effectively without constant supervision was alien to Imperial thinking." "What about our counter-sniper protocols?" demanded Admiral Krexmoth. "Sir, we don't have counter-sniper protocols," admitted the tactical officer. "Our military doctrine assumes that enemy forces will be detectable through standard sensor arrays. These humans are using no-energy signatures that our equipment can track. The Empire's weapons were designed to fight enemies who used similar technology. Energy shields could stop plasma bolts, sensor jamming could disrupt guided missiles, and orbital bombardment could destroy fixed positions. But none of these advantages mattered against enemies who used primitive weapons and disappeared into natural terrain. "Deploy hunting squads," ordered Zethkar. "Small teams with the best sensors and communications. Have them sweep the areas where snipers have been active." It was a reasonable strategy according to Imperial military theory. Elite soldiers with advanced equipment should easily locate and eliminate primitive enemies. But the hunting squads found nothing except empty positions and cold trails. Elena Rodriguez watched one such squad through her rifle scope as they searched the valley below her position. 8 Imperial soldiers in advanced armor, carrying sensors that could detect heat signatures from a kilometer away, moving in perfect formation as they searched for signs of sniper activity. They were looking in exactly the wrong places. Imperial sensors were designed to detect energy sources, metal objects and large heat signatures. They could find a powered vehicle from 50 kilometers away, or spot a plasma rifle through solid rock. But Elena was producing almost no detectable signature at all. Her rifle was made primarily of composite materials that didn't show up on metal detectors. Her body heat was masked by thermal regulation clothing that dispersed her heat signature. She moved slowly and infrequently, avoiding the motion sensors that would detect rapid movement. Most importantly, she understood something the Imperials didn't. Patience was a weapon. The hunting squad spent 4 hours searching the area where Elena had fired her last shot. They used every sensor in their arsenal, deployed detection drones, and even called in orbital scans. They found nothing because Elena had moved to a completely different area before they even began their search. "This is Squad Leader Vextal," came the radio transmission Elena intercepted. "Sector 12 is clear. No signs of enemy activity." Elena smiled grimly as she lined up her shot. The squad leader was standing in an exposed position, confident that his advanced armor and superior technology made him invulnerable to primitive human weapons. The bullet took him center mass, punching through his energy field and armor like they were made of paper. His squad immediately dove for cover, but Elena was already displacing to her next position. "Squad leader down," came the panicked transmission. "Sniper fire from unknown position. Request immediate support." But by the time reinforcements arrived, they found only another empty firing position and another cold trail. Elena had disappeared into the wilderness like a ghost, ready to strike again when the opportunity presented itself. On the Imperial flagship, the reports of failed hunting missions were piling up. Every attempt to locate and eliminate the snipers had resulted in more Imperial casualties and no enemy losses. "This is impossible," insisted the science officer. "Primitive beings with outdated technology cannot simply vanish from advanced detection systems." "There must be some explanation, Commander." Zethkar was beginning to suspect that the explanation was something the Empire had never encountered before. Enemies who were better at individual combat than Imperial forces, despite their technological disadvantages. "Bring me everything we know about human military history," he ordered. "I want to understand how these creatures fight." The resulting briefing was enlightening and disturbing. Human military history was filled with examples of small forces defeating larger, better-equipped armies through superior tactics, individual skill, and psychological warfare. They had terms for these concepts: guerrilla warfare, asymmetric tactics, force multiplication. According to their historical records, reported the intelligence officer, humans have been using sniper tactics for over 2 centuries. Individual marksmen operating independently to eliminate high-value targets and disrupt enemy operations. 2 centuries? Zethkar was amazed. They've been developing these techniques for that long? Yes, sir. They have entire military schools dedicated to training snipers. It's considered a specialized military skill, requiring years of training and natural aptitude. This was completely contrary to imperial military philosophy. The Empire believed in overwhelming technological superiority, applied through mass coordination. The idea that individual skill could be more important than superior equipment was revolutionary. There's more, sir, continued the intelligence officer. Humans have something called sniper culture. These individuals take pride in operating alone, making impossible shots and remaining undetected behind enemy lines. They consider it an art form. An art form? The concept was almost incomprehensible to imperial minds. War was science, not art. Battles were won through superior technology and overwhelming force, not through individual creativity and skill. But the evidence was undeniable. Human snipers were systematically dismantling imperial ground operations through methods that imperial military science couldn't counter or even fully understand. Sir, reported the communications officer urgently, we're receiving a transmission from General Morthak. He's requesting permission to withdraw all ground forces to orbital range. The request was unprecedented. Imperial forces had never withdrawn from a primitive enemy before, but they had also never faced an enemy that could kill their soldiers without being detected, located, or engaged in return. Zethkar realized that everything the Empire thought it knew about human military capabilities had been wrong. These weren't primitive savages with crude weapons. They were skilled warriors who had spent centuries perfecting tactics specifically designed to defeat technologically superior enemies. And somewhere on the planet below, Elena Rodriguez was already planning her next shot. Commander Zethkar had enough. After 2 weeks of mounting casualties and failed counter-operations, he decided to take personal command of the anti-sniper campaign. If primitive humans could outfight the Imperial military, then the Empire's reputation throughout the galaxy would be destroyed. Deploy the elite guard, he ordered, his 4 eyes blazing with determination. Bring down my personal combat unit. If standard forces cannot handle these snipers, then we'll use our most advanced warriors. The elite guard represented the pinnacle of Imperial military technology. Each soldier was equipped with prototype armor that could become completely invisible, sensors that could detect a heartbeat from 10 kilometers away, and weapons that could vaporize targets through solid rock. They were the Empire's answer to any military problem that couldn't be solved through conventional force. Squad leader Krathvel stood in the transport shuttle, checking his equipment one final time. His invisibility field was functioning perfectly. His motion sensors were calibrated to detect the slightest movement, and his plasma rifle was loaded with armor-piercing rounds that could penetrate any known material. Our mission is simple, he told his 12-member team. Locate and eliminate the human snipers that have been causing our forces so much difficulty. These primitives may have surprised our regular troops, but they have never faced opponents with our capabilities. Elena Rodriguez was 3 kilometers away, watching the elite guard's insertion through her rifle scope. She had been expecting something like this. The Empire's frustration would eventually lead them to deploy their best units. She had been preparing for this confrontation for days. Control, this is Rodriguez, she whispered into her radio. Enemy elite unit deploying in Sector 15. 12 soldiers with advanced equipment. Beginning observation. Elena had studied Imperial elite guard tactics through intercepted communications and battlefield observation. They were incredibly skilled and equipped with technology that made them nearly invisible to normal detection methods. But they had one critical weakness. They were trained to fight enemies who used similar technology. The elite guard spread out in a perfect search pattern, using their advanced sensors to scan for any sign of human presence. Their invisibility fields made them nearly transparent, and their movement was coordinated through neural links that allowed silent communication. But Elena wasn't looking for them with technology. She was using techniques that had been developed by human hunters for thousands of years, before advanced sensors were even invented. She watched for disturbances in the natural environment. A blade of grass bending without wind, a small rock shifting position, the barely visible distortion that even perfect invisibility fields created when they moved against a complex background. There, 50 meters from her position, something was moving through the undergrowth with inhuman precision. The movement was too regular, too careful to be a natural animal. It was definitely one of the elite guard soldiers. Elena remained perfectly still, controlling her breathing and heartbeat. The Imperial soldier was using sensors that could detect her if she made the slightest sound or movement. But she had been trained to remain motionless for hours at a time, a skill that no amount of technology could replicate. The elite guard soldier moved closer, his sensor sweeping the area where Elena lay hidden. According to his equipment, the area was completely empty. No heat signatures, no electronic emissions, no movement detected. But squad leader Krathavel had survived dozens of battles by trusting his instincts as much as his technology. Something felt wrong about this location. The positioning was too perfect for a sniper's nest, with clear lines of sight in multiple directions and multiple escape routes. If he were a primitive sniper, this is exactly where he would position himself. Elena watched as the invisible soldier stopped directly in front of her position. Through her scope, she could see the faint distortion that marked his location. He was close enough that she could have reached out and touched him. The Imperial soldier stood motionless for several minutes, scanning the area with every sensor at his disposal. His equipment told him that nothing was there, but his combat experience suggested otherwise. Finally, his training won out over his instincts, and he moved on to search other areas. Elena waited until he was completely out of range before allowing herself a single, quiet breath. The encounter had been closer than she liked, but it proved that human stealth techniques could defeat even the Empire's most advanced detection systems. But now she had a problem. The elite guard was too skilled and too well equipped to defeat using her normal tactics. She needed to level the playing field somehow. The answer came to her as she watched the squad's search pattern. They were using their advanced technology as a crutch, trusting their sensors more than their own observations. That dependency could be turned against them. Elena began to move through the forest using techniques that her grandfather had taught her during hunting trips as a child. She avoided stepping on dry leaves, moved only when natural sounds could mask her movement, and used the terrain to remain hidden from direct observation. Most importantly, she did something that no Imperial tactical computer would ever predict. She moved toward the enemy instead of away from them. The elite guard had established a base of operations in a small clearing, confident that their sensors would detect any approaching threat. Their invisibility fields were active, their weapons were ready, and their detection equipment was scanning continuously. Elena approached to within 200 meters of their position and set up for what would be the most challenging shot of her career. She would have only one opportunity before the entire squad would focus on her position. Through her scope, she could see the faint distortions that marked the invisible soldiers. Her target was the squad leader, identifiable by his different movement patterns and the way other soldiers deferred to his position. Elena controlled her breathing, calculated wind speed and distance, and slowly squeezed the trigger. The shot rang out across the forest, and squad leader Krathavel spun and fell, his invisibility field flickering as his armor systems failed. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Plasma bolts lit up the forest as the remaining elite guard soldiers opened fire on Elena's position. Trees exploded into splinters, rocks vaporized, and the ground itself began to melt from the intensity of their weapons. But Elena was already gone. The moment she fired, she had rolled away from her position and begun moving through a predetermined escape route. The elite guard was pouring devastating firepower into empty space while she disappeared into the forest. "Squad leader down," came the panicked transmission. "Unknown sniper, extreme range shot. Target has displaced, unable to locate." For the first time in Imperial military history, an elite guard unit had been successfully engaged by a primitive enemy. The psychological impact on Imperial forces was immediate and severe. If their best soldiers could be defeated by human snipers, then no Imperial unit was safe. On his flagship, Commander Zethkar received the report in stunned silence. The elite guard was supposed to be invincible. They had never failed a mission, never taken casualties from primitive enemies, never been outfought by inferior technology. But a single human with a simple rifle had just proven that all of the Empire's assumptions about military superiority were wrong. The Imperial War Council convened an emergency session for the first time in over a century. Representatives from across the galaxy gathered to discuss what many were calling the Empire's greatest military crisis since its founding. Commander Zethkar stood before the assembled council, his four eyes reflecting the shame of unprecedented defeat. The holographic displays around him showed the tactical situation on Kepler 442b. Imperial forces pinned down in defensive positions, supply lines disrupted and morale collapsing under constant sniper attacks. "Honored Council," he began, his voice carrying none of its usual confidence. "I must report that our assessment of human military capabilities was fundamentally flawed." High Admiral Vorth An, Supreme Commander of Imperial Forces, leaned forward with interest. "Explain yourself, Commander. Are you telling this council that primitive humans have defeated Imperial technology? Not defeated, sir, but neutralized. Our technological advantages mean nothing against enemies we cannot locate, predict, or engage. Human snipers have systematically dismantled our ground operations using tactics we do not understand and cannot counter." The council chamber erupted in shocked discussion. For 500 years, the Empire had expanded across the galaxy by crushing all resistance through overwhelming technological superiority. The idea that primitive tactics could be effective against Imperial forces challenged everything they believed about warfare. "How many casualties have we sustained?" asked Admiral Krexmoth. Zethkar consulted his reports with visible reluctance. "Over 800 confirmed kills, sir. Mostly officers, specialists, and equipment operators. The humans have been targeting our most valuable personnel, causing maximum disruption to our command structure." 800? The number was staggering. Imperial forces typically conquered entire worlds without losing 50 soldiers. "How many enemy snipers are responsible for these losses?" "Intelligence estimates fewer than 60 individuals, sir, operating independently across multiple battlefields. The mathematical implications were horrifying. 60 primitive humans had killed more Imperial soldiers than entire planetary armies in previous conquests. The force multiplication was beyond anything in Imperial military experience. Elena Rodriguez crouched in her hide position, listening to intercepted Imperial communications through her equipment. The fear in their transmissions was unmistakable. After 3 weeks of constant pressure, the Empire's ground forces were operating more like hunted animals than conquering armies. "Control, this is Rodriguez," she whispered into her radio. "Imperial forces are showing signs of complete tactical breakdown. They're not advancing, barely patrolling, and grouping together in large defensive formations." "Copy that, Rodriguez. How's your ammunition situation?" Elena checked her remaining rounds. "Still good for another week of operations?" "These Imperials are making it easy by clustering together. I can engage multiple targets from single positions." This was the key insight that the Empire was finally beginning to understand. Human snipers weren't just killing Imperial soldiers. They were changing Imperial behavior in ways that made them even more vulnerable. Fear of sniper attacks had forced Imperial units to abandon their mobility, concentrate in predictable patterns, and avoid the aggressive tactics that had made them successful in previous wars. In the council chamber, Admiral Vorth An was reviewing intelligence reports about human military philosophy that painted a disturbing picture of their enemies. "According to this analysis," he said, "humans have spent centuries developing warfare techniques specifically designed to defeat technologically superior opponents. They call it asymmetric warfare, using enemy strengths against them while exploiting unexpected weaknesses." "That's impossible," protested General Krelthos. "Primitive species don't develop complex military theories. They rely on simple tactics and brute force." "Apparently not these humans," Vorth An replied grimly. "Their military history shows consistent examples of smaller, less equipped forces defeating larger, more advanced armies through superior tactics and individual skill." The reports included examples that shocked the Imperial officers. Human forces had defeated enemies with overwhelming advantages in numbers, technology, and resources. They had developed techniques for fighting in every possible environment, against every conceivable opponent, using whatever weapons and tactics proved most effective. Most disturbing was the realization that human snipers represented just one aspect of their military capabilities. If individual marksmen could neutralize Imperial advantages so completely, what could human forces accomplish when they deployed their full range of tactics? "Sir," reported the intelligence officer, "we've also discovered that the humans have been studying our military doctrine for months before this conflict began. They knew exactly how we would attack and prepared countermeasures accordingly." This revelation sent shockwaves through the Council. The Empire's military doctrine had been successful for centuries, precisely because it was predictable and overwhelming. Enemy forces could see Imperial attacks coming, but could never stop them through sheer technological superiority. But humans had turned that predictability into a weakness. By understanding exactly how Imperial forces would operate, they had prepared tactics that neutralized every Imperial advantage while exploiting vulnerabilities that no previous enemy had even recognized. "What are you recommending, Commander?" asked Admiral Vorthon. Zethkar took a deep breath before answering. "Immediate withdrawal from human space, sir. Our forces cannot operate effectively against these tactics. Continued engagement will result in the destruction of our ground armies without achieving any strategic objectives." The council chamber fell silent. In 500 years of expansion, Imperial forces had never withdrawn from a primitive enemy. The political implications were staggering. If the Empire couldn't defeat humans, how many other species might realize that Imperial technology wasn't invincible? "There's something else, sir," Zethkar continued. "Intelligence suggests that humans have been sharing their anti-Imperial tactics with other species in the region. If this war continues, we may face similar resistance across multiple worlds." Elena Rodriguez had just received new orders through her communication system. Human Command was expanding sniper operations to include training programs for allied species throughout the sector. The techniques that had proven so effective against Imperial forces would soon be spreading across the galaxy. "Rodriguez, this is Command. Outstanding work on Kepler 442b. We're reassigning you to training duty. You'll be teaching sniper tactics to resistance fighters on 6 different worlds." Elena smiled as she packed her equipment. In 3 weeks, she had helped prove that the Galactic Empire wasn't invincible. Their technology, their numbers, and their centuries of success meant nothing against enemies who understood how to fight, smart instead of fighting with brute force. The Empire had made the mistake of assuming that technological superiority guaranteed military victory. They had learned too late that in warfare, the most important weapon was the human mind, something that no amount of advanced technology could replace or defeat. Admiral Vorthon finally broke the silence in the council chamber. "The withdrawal order is approved. All Imperial forces will evacuate human space immediately. For the first time in galactic history, the mighty Galactic Empire was retreating from a primitive enemy, and across the galaxy other species were taking notice, realizing that the Empire's reign of technological terror could be challenged by those who were brave enough and smart enough to fight back. The humans had shown them the way. Now it remained to be seen who would follow their example.